Welcome back to R&B Fantasy. My name is Ryan. I am not joined by either of my podcast mates, Vic or Boyd, but they'll be here once again. They held down the fort while I was gone this past weekend, and I'm holding down the fort now. So, without further ado, we'll get into today's show, which is Week 4 waivers. It'll be a rather quick one because I'm by myself today. So, these are the two QBs that I have on my radar to stream this week. I don't particularly think that there's any QBs that are long-term solutions on the waiver wire. However, these two would be intriguing in case your starter has gone down or you are just consistently streaming the position throughout the year. Sam Darnold is only rostered in 38% of leagues, and he's coming off a great week with 23 points against Houston, and he faces Green Bay in Week 4, they've given up the 10th most passing yards this year. So hopefully, he gets to be able to air the ball out a little bit more. And hopefully that game, with how well the offense has been running in Green Bay, that it could be closer to a shootout. So hopefully Sam Darnold has yet another good game. Then we also have Geno Smith, who was also on last week's waiver report around 28%. Now he's rostered at about 40%. Geno Smith is, there's nothing really exciting about him, but he is quarterback 12 on the year. He's just been pretty consistent throughout the whole, throughout the first 3 weeks. So he's another viable option that if you're desperate at QB, he's kind of one of those, safer ones. In terms of running back pickups, two of these running backs are, I think, must adds, and then the remaining three are kind of intriguing ads or spec ads that you could have. Now, everybody and their mother has been, rushing to the waivers to get Bucky Irving. He's rostered in just 44% of sleeper leagues. Now, if you've been listening to the show, we've been saying the last 2 weeks that Bucky Irving should be stashed in every league. And I stand by that. He is one of my highest roster dynasty running backs behind Jordan Mason. So that's also, one of those things where I was aware of him as a prospect. So that's why we were very early on him. Another guy who I was not on and I have no dynasty shares of is Braylon Allen. He's rostered in 46% of leagues. Now, Braylon Allen, we've seen, has had some explosiveness, which we were questioning coming into the league. He's clearly demonstrated that there shouldn't have been any questions of it. He is the best handcuff in fantasy right now because not only are the Jets a decent enough offense to support him if Breece Hall isn't there, he's getting work alongside Breece Hall. So if you desperately need a running back, starting Braylon Allen every week wouldn't be a horrible thing. Whereas if Breece Hall were to ever go down, Braylon Allen could potentially become a league winner. And having him on your roster is almost I wouldn't be surprised if Braylon Allen shoots up to about 60 to 70% rostership. And even then, I think that might be a little bit too low. The next three guys here are kind of spec ads in case you want to make stashes. Emmanuel Wilson is more of a stash to kind of see where it goes because he did get 12 touches, or excuse me, 12 carries last week, and he was more efficient than Josh Jacobs was. Every single time he's been on the field, he's appeared to be more efficient and more explosive than Jacobs. I see him only as really a handcuff if Jacobs were to ever go down. However, if it continues to be that he becomes, more and more efficient, he could end up starting over Josh Jacobs or getting more snaps until Marshawn Lloyd gets back in 3 weeks. So he's kind of one of those guys where, if you're in a deeper league, you can definitely stash him. Now, Justice Hill is more of a stream for this week just because that the Ravens play the Bills and the Bills are coming off an amazing performance against Jacksonville. So if this is a high scoring affair, we could see what happened in the first week with Justice Hill, where there was a lot of dump offs in the passing game. I'm not 100% sure that is going to be the case, but if we're predicting that this game is going to be, a high scoring affair and the Ravens are not going to comfortably in the lead like they were against Dallas, Justice Hill may end up getting more usage in this game, and he is a PPR machine when called upon. So he's kind of one of those super desperate RB2 plays if you need it in a zero RB or hero RB squad. Ray Davis is more so just a stash because he's clearly demonstrated. Obviously, they had a blowout win this past week against Jacksonville. He did get a lot more touches when James Cook was subbed off, so he's the clear backup in Buffalo behind. So we don't really have to worry that much about Ty Johnson. But if James Cook were to ever go down, Ray Davis would be a very good handcuff to have. I'm not saying that he would be a league winner similar to Braylon Allen, but it's always nice to have a potential a premium handcuff on your team. Now this week, there's not that many wide receiver pickups that I felt were mentionable. These three are the ones that I would be looking to add. Now, everybody and their mother has, heard about Jawan Jennings dropping, 47 points and absolutely torching his matchup. And if you started him this week and didn't win, I want to see the rest of your lineup because he basically won like so many people their games last week that picked him up and were desperate for wide receiver help and they got blessed. Now, I would keep in mind that Debo's is going to be out for a couple more weeks. However, Kittle is labeled as week to week, so Jawan Jennings he will definitely not see the usage and production that he saw this past week because he, put up a historic performance, somewhat like a legacy game essentially. But he still has Ayuk there. And once Debo and Kittle come back, Jennings is going to be back to just being, a guy who gets a few receptions a game. So I wouldn't drop a lot of fab on him if you're in a fab league. I would definitely try to make a claim for him if you have the top waiver claim because he would be a very good start for the remaining weeks. But we have to keep in mind that Kittle and Debo are not out for super long times. I would say about 2 to 3 weeks before both of them come back. But who knows? There could be re-injuries. So it's one of those things where depending on how deep your league is, you make that call as to how much fab. But I would not recommend spending a huge amount of fab. If you're going to spend a lot of fab this week, I would recommend doing it more on Bucky Irving because of the season long upside that Bucky Irving has, rather than Juwan Jennings, who will be like this for 2 to 4 weeks, give or take. And then this next player is also a guy who's been on the waiver wire show for the last 3 weeks is Wan'Dale Robinson. Now, obviously, Malik Neighbors is the clear alpha. He has been insane. He could end up, breaking rookie records. He's already like on pace too. But Wan'Dale Robinson is still getting a lot of targets. Like he went from 12 to 4 to 8 targets in the last 3 weeks. He hasn't put up like insane performances, and the second week was saved by a touchdown. But the fact that he's still getting volume with Malik Neighbors there, and that Daniel Jones is finding him, I would definitely say that Wan'Dale is kind of one of those desperate wide receiver 3 or 4 plays. Like he is the 36 wide receiver, which is a back end wide receiver 3. So I would definitely say that he should be rostered at this point. I'm not going to say that he'll be like, potentially season long, but it's looking like he is the solidified number 2 in New York. And he is somebody that we've seen in the past do well when given the chance. He would always get hurt. So I would definitely add Wan'Dale Robinson if you want to save on some fab, but also get a decent pickup for wide receiver if you're struggling. And then this next one is a play on Andy Dalton, banking that Andy Dalton keeps starting. So Adam Thielen just got put on IR today. So he's going to be out for at least 4 weeks, potentially more. And that leaves Xavier Legette and Deontay Johnson to lead the wide receiver room in Carolina. Now, Andy Dalton was the first quarterback to throw for over 300 passing yards and 3 touchdowns this season. And that's for any quarterback this season, which I think is bananas. I don't think that that's going to be sustained throughout the rest of the season, but I believe that with him starting, it makes the pass catching options and just the offense in Carolina in general a little bit more viable now. If you have Jonathan Brooks just chilling on your bench, I would be a little bit more happy now that I have him, seeing that this offense can actually function. And with Adam Thielen down, it adds a clear path to their number one, their round 1 pick this year. I wasn't a huge fan of Xavier Legette as a prospect, but there is that draft capital. He does have that manufactured touch upside. It's kind of one of those like let's see where it goes. I wouldn't drop a huge amount of fab on him, but as we know with rookie wide receivers, they can sometimes start off slow and then do really well through the ending stretch of the season. So he's another guy that if you're trying to get for cheap and your league is maybe potentially a little shallower, he could be a guy that you add. In terms of tight ends, like tight ends just been brutal this year. This is just more so like just recency because like I don't see any of these guys being long-term solutions at the position. But Cole Kmet had an amazing game. He's definitely one of those guys that we can just kind of see where it goes, especially with Keenan Allen out, because that kind of opens up a little bit more volume to be shared around. And Caleb Williams almost threw for 400 yards this past week against the Colts. So that was pretty interesting to see. I know he has been pretty disappointing thus far, but being the number one overall pick and being a great prospect, I definitely don't see Caleb Williams struggling for that long. And, you have to be good to be able to throw for almost 400 yards in the NFL regardless. So Cole Kmet is kind of one of those spec ads. I would not be dropping a lot of fab for any of these guys, but this is just the order prioritization. Zach Ertz, we also had mentioned last week. He had a lot of volume in this past week's game at the very end of the game. I really don't know what's happening with Cliff Kingsbury's offense because the first 2 weeks it was very uninspiring, and then this past week they just were airing it out and pretty effectively at that. So I don't really know what to make of it. I would definitely say that Zach Ertz is, probably in line with Cole Kmet. I think Zach Ertz could potentially be a little bit more of a season long play just because they really only have, Terry McLaurin as like, that big main option. So we'll see where that goes. I wouldn't recommend putting a lot of money on him, but you could pick or choose between him and Komet, and I wouldn't fault you either way. Now, Noah Fant was a guy I was interested in the offseason. Now, with Geno Smith doing really well and, both Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker a little banged up, I don't I don't think it's unreasonable to think that their passing, goes up a little bit if both of those guys happen to be out this next week. And with how well Geno Smith has been airing out the ball, Noah Fant is definitely one of those guys where he just saw 6 receptions this past week. That could be in for another repeat performance. He's a very, for maybe like a 12, 14 team league, if your tight end's hurt type of ad. This position is just brutal this year. But Noah Fant, kind of emerged as a potential option. But I wouldn't be surprised if he blanks this week and then ends up being dropped. Like that's another thing. I would not put that much money, if any, on Noah Fant. Maybe like $1 or so, just to kind of see where it goes. But yeah, tight end's been brutal this year. Thank you all for watching today's episode of Week 4 waivers. This was a little different than what we normally do here at R&B Fantasy. Usually it's in more of a podcast format with a little less editing. I've been a little bit under the weather, so I had to stop occasionally throughout this recording. But make sure you guys leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next video. Peace.